If you ever find yourself going over the same thoughts again and again and again in that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 mind, where anxiety thoughts keep plaguing your day and it could be interrupting your work life, it could be interrupting your relationships. Like a phrase I remember hearing, it could be you're at work when you're at home and you're at home when you're at work. You're never really anywhere. And it's because your mind, again, keeps producing these thoughts, or more importantly, these anxiety-based thoughts that plague your mind. And very often, anxiety thoughts are that very negative pre-projection of a future event, that what if? What if this goes wrong at work? What if that goes wrong in my relationships? What if I've said something wrong when I met up with my friends last time? Now, the technique that I'm going to go through in this video can have a huge impact on relieving that stress so you can get that headspace back. Because the way I always see this is it's like if we've got anxiety-based thoughts, it's like having a fire somewhere that we can't see, and that fire creates smoke. And then we're in this house, and all of a sudden we're choking on this smoke. And when you've got smoke in a room, the only thing you're focused on is smoke. And one technique that can be very useful for clearing that smoke is journaling. Now, online today, you can see that some people might say, just chuck a couple of thoughts down, only take you a minute here. But for me, and I've been doing journaling for years, I started way back in 1993, and it changed my life. However, there are, as I'm going to go through this video, considerations that you need to take into account as well. But journaling is a meditative practice. But unfortunately, again, because we are now plagued with social media videos of 30 seconds here and 1 minute there, what a lot of people from my own research are now doing is maybe spending 30 seconds to a minute journaling, and that's it. But that is not going to clear that smoke out of the mind. If you're going to do journaling, it means that you sit with it and take time and discipline and focus to think about exactly what it is that you're writing. If your mind is used to jumping around and, say, watching social media videos, for example, I'm not saying you are, but if you do find that your mind struggles to focus, which a lot of people do, this can be a phenomenal way to build that discipline to focus. So the process that I would recommend for myself and that I've been teaching for many years now is start off with maybe 3 minutes, just set a timer, and then sit down. I prefer paper and pen, but if you prefer phone apps or writing on your laptop or computer, whichever you prefer. So sit there and time yourself through 3 minutes to start with. And then make sure that you're not going to be disturbed before you start even writing though. But set that intention that you are going to fully focus for the allotted time that you've allowed for your journaling. Then once you've grounded yourself and you've set that time, then just start to write. What I'd suggest at the start is don't really focus on necessarily what you're writing. Just start to write. Allow your mind that time to just free flow. So it could talk about your work, it could talk about your home, it could talk about somebody that might have frustrated you in some way, shape and form. Don't force your mind to write anything in particular. Just let it flow. Because this is about training your mind to just speak freely. So many times we can find ourselves today trying to be something, got to be this and we've got to be that. But journaling is a beautiful space where you can just let go and be free. It's a very creative art. And then as you build up from, say, 3 minutes, maybe take it up to 5 minutes, and then ideally 10 or 15 minutes. The one thing I find as you start to build up the time, if your mind is used to jumping around and not being focused for more than a few minutes at a time, you can start to hit what's known as a threshold. Your mind might start to feel really frustrated and you might want to do anything other than focus. Well, if it does do that, what you're doing there is you're training your mind, you're training your discipline. And that's a good thing. Because the more focused you become, the more you will be able to process those anxiety thoughts in the future. Not just with journaling, but in your own mind. You see, the one thing with anxiety-based thoughts is they become much worse if we are not trained to focus our mind on one particular area at a time. So it could be that we're thinking about work. Think about that for 10 seconds. Then we jump to something else and jump to something else and jump to something else. So in essence, your mind's trying to process 25 things a minute and it gets logjam. It can't function because it doesn't know which one to focus on. So when you're journaling, it gives you that time to focus and just allow your mind to be present with one thing, and then it might flow to something else, and then it might flow to something else. But that's perfectly fine, because what you're doing then is you're being observant of it moving from one thing to another. Anxiety hits the hardest when we are not aware of the mind jumping from one thing to the other. And then what you'll start to notice as you get into the habit of journaling more and more is that your mind then starts to focus on one area more than the other and go deeper into that area, so you get more of a fuller understanding. And then if you imagine you've been in this metaphorical room and there's lots of smoke and you're choking and you can't find the door and you're trying to find the door and you don't know where to look, and then it clears that smoke. You can see the room clearer, and then you can focus. And then you might find that those 25,000 thoughts that have been plaguing your mind every minute are actually coming from 2 or 3 sources. Now, journaling is a fantastic technique to help you re-regulate those anxiety thoughts. It's not the only technique, but it is a very powerful one. However, as mentioned, there is concerns as well, because I'll put a link in the description below. I've made a full training video on how the mind puts the world together. And in that, you're going to find that I cover an area called Pandora's Box. The content or information in these videos is for educational and informational purposes only. And this is where I mention that all of the unresolved trauma memories of a person's mind are stored. Now, when those trauma memories are stored in your mind, if you start to journal and you start to really settle into one particular area, what you might find is that your mind starts to regress back into those areas of maybe unresolved trauma or uncomfortable memories in some way. And I would definitely recommend, while you're journaling, if you do start to notice your mind regress back into those unresolved trauma memories or things that just don't feel very comfortable at all, is just stop. Keep it more relevant today. Because if something arises that you're not prepared for, or it might feel overwhelming in some way, then that could be a lot more to deal with than those prior anxiety thoughts. So just start with what feels comfortable. Start with a couple of minutes, and then once you can do a couple of minutes, build up to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And remember, if you start to notice your mind getting frustrated and it's wanting to jump and do anything else, what's happening there is you're building the habit of discipline and focus. And that is a really powerful skill that can have a huge impact on the rest of your life as well. So if you've been journaling for a while, or you're just getting into journaling, or you've never done it before and you're interested in learning about other people's perspectives, feel free to put it in the comments below, because you never know, your comment might change somebody's life forever.